Professors of Reddit, have you ever been pressured or forced to pass an athlete or other student by your athletics department or university administration? How did that go? I was pressured by an assistant coach to allow a basketball player, an undergrad, into a doctoral level seminar I was teaching and was told that I should allow him to take the course online. The course wasn't available online. I refused. The assistant coach called my department chair, who told him in no uncertain terms that it was an inappropriate request. I'll allow it if you allow my 10-year-old nephew to be a starter in your squad. My dad is a tenured professor at a major football powerhouse. He often teaches an intro class popular with students trying to knock off one of their requirements, and so he sees a lot of football players. Most of the ones who do poorly do so because they just don't come to class. Dad claims he can tell which ones are going to go on to be coaches because they're mediocre on the field, but are smart enough to get at least a B in his class. Surprisingly, the athletics department actually backs him up. When my dad flunked the starting quarterback, the coaches didn't yell at him. Instead, when the QB retook the class the next semester, the football team sent someone to stand outside the classroom door and take attendance every day to make sure he was showing up. There is some sort of mafia at Ohio State that attempts to make sure that star athletes attend classes. Instructor at a device school. I've had a few star athletes that are just withdrawn by their advisor after they fail, which other students can't do, obviously. But I also had one, now plays in the NFL, who needed to be enrolled as a pre-freshman in order to be eligible for summer training. He was terrible and failed. I noticed after the semester that his grade had been altered to a passing grade. Filed a correction complaint and it was never addressed, changed back. Yeah, this is grounds for your university losing its accreditation. You should file a complaint with the registrar. At my school there was a huge scandal because professors kept creating classes that didn't exist and students that took them automatically got A's. Source: I go to UNC. Sounds more like Greendale than UNC. I TA'd a bunch in university and this was a major number. Athletes at our school were all in tutoring programs sponsored by the athletic department, and some coaches even require teammates to sit in the front row for every class. My university's athletic department is very strict on grades and classes for their players. I take for anatomy and the football players I have dealt with ask the most questions, seem interested and genuinely want to pass the class. They also have to sit in the front. Yes, an associate dean was sent to talk about some special considerations athletes wanted. Basically, more chances than other students to make up missed exams. I told said associate dean that there was no way, and if he wanted special favors for athletes, he should find another instructor. Said associate dean told me I should expect fallout from the administration. A couple of weeks later, I got a job offer for more money from a better school. Had the same associate dean in my office asking me to stay and offering my wife a job at the university. I told him thanks but no thanks. You're too kind. I would have told him to frick off. Good work for standing your ground. Yes, I was pressured to pass a football player in an undergraduate course. He came up to me after the first lecture and told me that he wouldn't be able to make it to many classes and that he would always be late when he did come because practice was right before class. I told him that, as long as he kept up with the coursework, I was fine with it. Apparently, that was the wrong answer because I got very aggressive calls from his coach and my department had within a few hours. I told them what I told him. It worked out fine in the end. He switched class and I didn't get any more footballers. Clarification. Both coach and department had lectured me on the importance of football and of this player, and on how I didn't understand because I was female, foreign and clearly nerdy. All true. They were not best pleased when I agreed with them. But you don't understand. That is correct. I do not understand, because it makes no sense. I love this response. I played basketball at Texas A&M years in the 90s. We had class checkers, usually girls who went by each player's class and checked if you were there. If you weren't there, everyone else on the team had to run 2 miles the next morning at 5:30 a.m. Only had one player skip class in 4 years. We also had study halls 7-9 p.m. Sunday Thursday, plus extra tutoring for whomever needed it. In the early 90s while I was an undergrad I was a physics and astronomy lab tech. One astronomy lab had a basketball player on it. He was a pretty good player but not the star. He was failing the lab. Read that again slowly. Failing. Lab. This was unusual. I talked to him after class one day and he said that he'd get help. That help happened to be an assistant coach who called me and flat asked me to give him a good grade anyway or to give him a selective curve. I said no and that he could still salvage a good grade by doing well on the last lab test and the final exam. The coach asked me what we could do to fix this. I said, I have office hours from 4:30 5:30 and we have a test prep session a week before each exam from 7:30 8:30. Tell him to get his butt into my office and to these sessions. He did. His last test grade and final were both in the high 90s. After his first two were in the 50s. He passed with a C. TLDR basketball player wanted a grade handed to him. I made him work for it. He aced the exams. Well, that wasn't the ending I was expecting at all. My football coach pressured my French teacher to let me play in an important game. Despite my grade being too low to allow it, she let me play but was very p. They were husband and wife. Honey, I love you but you ain't gonna get none of this rock hard slab of man body unless you give you Caladrin a passing grade. My last semester at college I TA'd for an upper level psych course and the majority of the school's basketball took the class. My assumption was it was one of the few taught by a black male professor, so they thought they didn't have to try very hard. From the emails they sent to protest grades this became apparent. All but one of the players rarely came to class and missed some exams. When they did take exams it was obvious the players were nowhere near college level education. Their answers read about 3rd grade level. I ended up flunking 4 of the 5, with one sending me constant emails about how unfair it was, since he was going to lose his eligibility to play. After speaking it over with my professor, he offered a one-time only makeup exam that was only offered to the players. None showed. In his last game he played, he beat the crap out of one of his rivals during a small fight at the game. He literally stomped on his head in front of the news cameras. Awkward. Whoa, so little drive to get somewhere to not even show up for the extra exam. And a nice gesture from the professor. I have never heard of something like that here. My uncle used to teach at a Big 12 university. He had weekly quizzes and he dropped the lowest 3 at the end of the term, including ones with zeros due to not showing up. Consequently, no makeup quizzes were offered. A bunch of football players signed up for his course and he warned them about the weekly quizzes because they would miss more than 3 classes due to games. My uncle had someone from the athletic department yelling at him on the phone at the end of the term when none of the players passed. Apparently the athletes rarely came to class even when they weren't away for games and didn't score high enough on exams to make up the points deficit. This was also in the 1980s and I guess the rules were a bit different back then because nothing happened to him. That's weird to me, because at my university, if it's a school-sponsored event, the professors have to work with you on makeup work. Either you do it early or after. Not from the school itself but from the student body and the coach. I received emails from the coach and even bribery from the team. I didn't budge so my phone number mysteriously went viral and the hate text messages and prank calls started to pour in. They still failed. To the naysayers, you grossly underestimate the lengths D1 athletics will go to keep their star players academically eligible. These are multi-million-dollar programs sustained by their student athletes they personally scouted. The coaches bank more money than any faculty, including most university presidents. They don't give a crap about academic integrity. I was pressured by a professor in the athletics department to allow a student to upload a 3-page essay assignment a few weeks late. The best part was that the class was online and the student had roughly 1.5 months to turn it in and claimed that he was too busy to attend the course. There are only 3 tests and 1 paper in the course. I had another athletics student ask me on the last day of class if he could submit any extra credit for a C. He had a 53% in the class. His excuse was simply that he forgot about the class colon. I've been out of college for 8 years, and I still have nightmares like this. My dad taught radio, TV, and film in the 70s at UMCP. He had several members of the Terps' athletic program in his classes. The one story he always tells is about getting a visit during his office hours at the end of a spring semester from two muscled coach types. They came in and started talking about one particular student and his performance in my dad's class. Dads knew who they were on about. He was somewhat of a mini celebrity on campus. He played on the defensive line for the Maryland Terrapins football team. He's going to pass, right? They asked my dad. Number. He never comes to class. He never does any of the assignments. And he's failed every test he's ever taken. Well, if he doesn't pass, they replied, we'd probably have to rough you up. Maybe we could show you how we break legs or something. Think about it and we're sure you'll do the right thing. They left and my dad gave the athlete a D, which is barely passing. The student athlete went on to be drafted in the first round of the NFL draft and had a storied career playing for an iconic American football team. Certainly the student didn't have anything to do with the threats of some selfish coaches. I won't name names, but you wonder if all the years of Pro Bowl awards and a Super Bowl championship ring would have come to that guy if my dad hadn't let him pass? Ah, Randy White, you made it too easy, my friend. This is standard practice at Princeton and at other Ivy League schools. At mid-semester, each professor must provide a list to the dean. The list contains the names of any student who is pulling less than a C in any class. What does the dean do? Calls the professor to see what the professor is going to do about it. Student athletes and important last names usually get a blank slate at that point. Haven't shown up for class all quarter and have zeros for all your assignments? No problem. None of those grades exist. Manage to turn in even one assignment and or show up for the final, and you will get at least a C. If your last name is on a building, that paper can practically be written on a post-it note with a highlighter. Source: Ivy League grad students. Ask any of them after the first year. Graduate here at D1 school. As a student athlete you will always pass every lab even if you never come. I taught lab sections. When a basketball player missed a lab, I was never contacted by the student, but the coach would turn in the assignment with the athlete's name on it, despite the fact that the athlete could not possibly have done it because he never came to lab. We would never let this pass for a regular student, but I was told by professors, who were told by the dean of students, to not ask questions. I lived with a D1 soccer player my freshman year. As a true freshman, he started and was a contributor to the team from the get-go. The kid also had no business being in college. The team had an academic advisor solely dedicated to them. She had all of the players' cell phone numbers and would literally call them to make sure they were in class or to make sure they were doing their work. She was constantly calling my roommate. He would go to her with his assignments and he would come back with his essays finished. Because of their travel schedule, he was almost always granted extra time to do things. The best was when he slept through a final. I was in bed and his phone kept vibrating and he wouldn't wake up. I get up and answer the phone. It's his advisor. Hello, are you not at your final? Sorry, this is his roommate. He's right here sleeping, so I'm gonna venture a guess that he missed it. Long pause. Can you wake him up and tell him to get there? I will. I smack my roommate on the back of the head. It's room 340, building C. He's not going to know where it is. I have a laugh with the woman, because she and I are probably the two people that know him best. My roommate stirs, being a little hungover and annoyed. I forget for a second that there is a school official on the other end of the line. Hey butthole, you missed your final. Here, put these freaking sweatpants on. I hand him the pair of $75 Under Armour sweatpants that my tuition probably paid for, and go suck your professor's dong until he allows you to take the test. After a long pause and what I could swear was muffled laughter, she thanks me and I hand my roommate the phone. He got to retake the test 2 days later. I know for a fact that that professor did not allow that, so it was definitely set up by the team. Also, my roommate loved to smoke weed and snort pills. No worry though, they always told him well in advance when the random drug tests were coming. I went to Yuga, and the football players were all given copies of the actual test ahead of time. Most of them still managed to barely pull C's. That makes me sad. I'd like to think Coach Rich wouldn't go along with something like that. Yes, The guy skipped most of the classes, got D's on the assignments he did complete, and didn't complete the final paper. Coach wanted me to give him an incomplete and allow him to do makeup work. Flunked the sucker, like I'm going to add to my workload because some basketball player is too lazy to come to class and do the work. My wife is a doctoral teaching fellow at a university. They're not a prominent sports school, but they do have multiple Division I sports teams. She has mentioned to me that she has been asked to show some flexibility in attendance policy to accommodate their traveling schedules, but they're still accountable for the workload. She mentioned once that the basketball coach inquired about how one of his athletes was performing in class. I believe she indicated that there was no possibility he would pass the class at that point. She didn't mention being pressured by the coach to alter his grade, and I believe he failed the class. There was one situation where there was 2 female athletes who had a nearly identical section in their term papers. My wife brought it to the proper authorities within the school and confronted the students about it. She gave them both F's on the papers, but no further disciplinary action was taken by the authorities. When speaking to colleagues, she was told that it was typical to sweep this sort of thing under the rug for a first-time offense and that it was not specific to athletes. I'm a student athlete, golf, at my college, and I can tell you most of the other athletes at my school are really lazy, and it's amazing how the system just lets them through. My coach won't even talk our teachers unless it's to confirm when we will be gone for matches. He tells us that our grades are our responsibility, and if we can't handle that, then we have no business playing sports. In my opinion, that's how it should be. This was at high school, but it's related to the question. My mother had the rule that I couldn't play on the baseball team unless I pulled a B in all my classes. At the time I was rocking a solid D in geometry, but as luck had it, my geometry teacher was tight with the baseball coach. I came into class one day and he asked me, "Is everything good now?" He had bumped my grade all the way up to a B. It was shady as heck, and I suck at geometry to this day, but I ended up playing baseball that year, so I had that going for me, which was nice. Just think of what the world would be like if you could prove alternate interior angle equality, you son of a B. Not a professor, but taught a couple of courses as an undergrad as part of some neat but program. I flunked one of our star basketball players and had turned in my grades about a week before grades were due. When going back to make sure I had done everything, I noticed that his grade was magically unflunked and switched to a B. I didn't ask any questions cause I really didn't care, and the kid did put in lots of extra effort meeting with me to try to get his grades up. He just sucked at the subject. Also, I flunked a student who was the son of a prof in the same department I was working in. She flipped crap, somehow got the chair of the department to agree to let him retake 2/3 exams and 2/4 essays. The chair then coached me on how to make sure he still flunked, and we designed the special new exams together, making the questions something that I could answer. But no way any of my students could unless they just had an uncanny knack for the field. I ended up flunking his butt in the end, but a year later I had to take one of her courses on stats. She couldn't flunk me for 2 reasons. I had over a 100% on all of my exams and coursework up to the final, and everyone in the course as well as the chair knew that. However, she claimed that I failed the final and ended up giving me a C+ in the course. The chair and I tried to challenge this, knowing it was a load of bull crap, but she won in the end after making some appeal to the fricking dean, which did not allow us to view the test scores. I'm now happily in graduate school for that field, and the chair went out of his way to explain that particular discrepancy on my transcripts when I applied. I also received an A+ on the part 2 of the stats course taught by a different professor. Frick you, Dr. Mason. I work for my university's biology department, specifically our lower mid-level labs. A lot of athletes take my labs. We usually give them a little more leniency as far as attendance, and that's it. Grade-wise, they're held to the same standards as every other student. If they fail because of crap reports, they fail. Period. Sometimes they complain, but we kindly tell them to frick off. IDK how other schools handle their athletes, or how the actual classes go though. I've heard my fair share of rumors of a certain NBA player, who's quite famous actually, and went to a local high school, taking a Spanish class that his high school actually created for only the player. I went to a pretty obscure state university in Ohio. I had a limited time available to attend classes because I have 4 school-age kids and I had to be home when they were home. So I had to look for classes that would fit into a 5-hour daily block. When I went to my advisor to ask about several classes that would work perfectly, but were blocked, she sheepishly told me that there were special sections and were for specific students. I found out later that they were for school athletes only, and that they were dumbed down versions of regular classes. I started tiering physics courses when I was an undergrad. The department was short on TAs and I was available. I ended up going to grad school at the same university that I attended for undergrad, so I just kept on tiering. Over 6 years of teaching, I had a pretty big number of student athletes pass through my classes. Overall, they cover the gamut of students you would meet. Some are smart, some are lazy, some are there on scholarship and are working hard as frick to keep it, some seem to think that they deserve an A. I had a few students get grades low enough that they were in jeopardy of losing their scholarships and 1, maybe 2, that did. And there was plenty of whining and grade grubbing. But that is common in an intro physics course. But not once was I ever pressured by a coach to alter a grade. As a college instructor without tenure, one can be forced to pass lots of students, athlete or not. My future employment was in some part based on my ability to pass a certain number of students. If I was flunking too many people, then it would become an issue of she's not trying hard enough, not spending enough one-on-one time with students, not identifying and solving problems. Someone in this thread may have pointed this out already, but the truth is that there was always pressure for me to pass people if I wanted to stay employed. This may not be the case at all colleges, but it was for me. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.